This is the only country in the world where you can live in an apartment with air conditioning, you have 2 TVs, a refrigerator full of food, you have a car in the driveway, a little money in the bank, and you're poor.
Rick Harrison, how are you, sir?
I'm doing great.
You know, you're an entrepreneur, very successful businessman. A couple of questions, just to begin with here. You never went to college, did you?
Nope.
All this talk about free college, and you can't make it unless you went to college. How far in high school did you go?
Finished the 9th grade.
9th grade?
Yeah.
Then what happened?
Little bit of job here. I started buying and selling stuff. Basically educated myself. And then I'd always been buying and selling stuff. My dad had a little coin shop, and I wanted a pawn shop.
So you finished the 9th grade.
Yeah.
And you're self-educated.
Yeah.
You read.
Yeah.
What did you read?
Well, I mean, it'll go back to when I was a kid. I mean, I was a really sick kid. I developed epilepsy when I was 8 years old, and I'd have violent seizures, and I would literally I couldn't get out of bed. I couldn't walk. Sometimes I couldn't walk for a week or two. And my mom went to the library. I mean, we were lower middle income. My dad was in the Navy. He was in Vietnam. My mom's trying to sell real estate on the side. We didn't have a lot of money.
And you were in San Diego back then.
Yeah, San Diego. And you know, this is 1973. There is no cable. There's no kids programming on television. And we definitely didn't have the money for more than one TV in the house. So my mom went and got me a set of books that was sort of kismet. This really like changed my life. She went to the library, and it was John D. Fitzgerald's The Great Brain. It was about an 8-year-old kid growing up in Utah in the 1890s, coming up with all these little schemes to make money. And I just devoured the books. I think there was like 8 books in the series. I read them in a week or two. And I just fell in love with reading ever since then. I mean, I was 12 years old. I was going to the library and checking out books on physics.
You're libertarian, conservative, it depends on the issue. You're Republican, Democrat, pro-Trump, anti-Trump. Tell us.
More of a libertarian, pro-Trump mostly. Like I said, I don't agree with everything he does. I mean,
what do you agree with?
Lower taxes, less government. Because in the end, that's what works. Mm-hmm. And it's just not a theory. I mean, you can go throughout history. When we had less government, you have a better economy, you have better lives, better everything.
And the invisible hand is that we all interact with each other. We know what we want better than anybody else knows what we want, and so forth and so on. So when the government intervenes, basically it's a relative handful of people with an army of bureaucrats telling us what we want, telling us what we need. How can those handful of people, those masterminds, know as much as all the rest of us? And isn't the problem that they can give us a piece of cheese, but to explain how we get a piece of cheese actually requires people to pay attention for about 3 minutes so you can explain it?
I mean, it's literally an office worker telling a plumber how to do his job. You know, there is a need for government. We do, we need roads. You know, we need a system of educating our kids. I think it should be all vouchers for teaching our kids. So there's school choice. We need to make sure no one's shooting at us and things like that. But bureaucracy we have now. I mean,
you came from very little. You didn't go to college. You didn't get a high school diploma. And according to many people in our country, that's it. You're never going to succeed. And you're an example of somebody who says, wait a minute. I've got my own brain. I've got my 2 hands, relatively good health. I am going to succeed. Yeah. And in America, I can succeed. Is that right?
It's true. I mean, well, you know, I think it would be a lot harder for me to do the same thing today because there's just so much government BS you have to go through. I mean, there's constantly a new law. There's some new rule regulation. More and more difficult to fire a bad employee. I mean, it's in the 80s. I could go down and get a business license and be open in 3 weeks. Now it's 3 or 4 months. And it's like that with almost everywhere in this country. It's just the layers and layers of BS. It's much more difficult for, a young couple sitting at the kitchen table say, hey, should we go open our own business? You're going to need a lot more money. There's going to be a lot more BS. There's a lot more expenses.
Now, the Supreme Court rules that, yes, states can tax the internet. So now you have 50 states, District of Columbia, the territories. Some guy wants to start a business like you. He doesn't have a lot of capital. He wants to go on the internet, can't really afford a brick and mortar store. And he's got to be able to, or she, to file taxes in every state of the union and then some.
Well, and then some. I mean, we look at California. California, I think, has got 59 counties, and in those counties, they have different. I mean, they have a couple hundred different sales tax rates, and you can't. You rate basically what you do is just make it more and more difficult, and it's just the insanity of government.
You've got one of the most popular TV shows in America, one of the highest rated TV shows on cable. I'm sure people know who you are when you're walking the street. I know that in Las Vegas because when we were with you, everybody, hey, Rick.
Yeah.
So you're speaking out more about the country. You're speaking out more about capitalism, about liberty. Is that because you're recognized and you're part of the culture and you're concerned about the future of the country?
Well, yeah, I am. I'm concerned about the future of the country. I mean, I have 6 kids. I have 3 grandkids. And there is going to be an economic reckoning in this country eventually. The government will give you all their voodoo economics about how Social Security is fully funded. It's insanity. It's the equivalent of me saying, well, I had $1 million and I loaned it to myself, but then and I gave myself an IOU, but then I went out and partied and spent all the money, but I'm still a millionaire because I owe it to myself.
There's no money in Social Security.
There's no money. There is no. They have a Social Security trust fund there is no Social Security trust fund.
The government took all the money.
The government spent all the money, and it just concerns me that eventually we'll have an economic reckoning.
Because of the massive debt?
It's the massive debt, and eventually they will have to monetize the debt, and it will cause inflation.
Venezuela.
Yeah, look at Venezuela. Some of the richest natural resources in the world. It has more oil than Saudi Arabia, but this is another thing that liberals really irk me on. They complain about when a CEO makes $20 million a year. They have no problem when a sports star makes $20 million a year. And the fact of the matter is, those CEOs that take care of the big oil companies and the big internet companies and all that, the reason they get paid that kind of money is they're no different than a big sports star. They're guys who, they have that skill set just like LeBron James has a skill set. And when you have a politician go like, I can run an oil company. No, you can't. So, and a perfect example is Venezuela, where they have more oil than Saudi Arabia, and they can't make any money off their oil and gas system.
And they were giving everybody free stuff. Now they don't have any stuff to give anybody.
The average Venezuelan I read lost 15 pounds last year because of the food shortages. And that's what socialism leads to. Capitalism works. The reason, look at the price of medical care over the past 20 years, okay? But elective surgeries, those prices have gone down over the past 20 years because you have capitalism working there. There's a million other things too with medical care. You have tort laws where everybody's suing everybody. I think I read once that almost every prescription drug out there has a lawsuit against it.
I don't doubt it, because in some states, when you drive around, like in Florida, you can't, there's every other billboard is personal injury lawyers. Every other commercial on the radio is personal injury lawyers. And I'm saying, how do these guys?
In capitalism, it's survival of the fittest. That's why this car company is competing. Every car company is trying to make a better car because people are going to buy the best car. When you have socialism and everything's ran by the government, they don't care if their car's any good. It's the only car. That's what you get. Capitalism needs a recession every once in a while to separate the wheat from the chaff. Mm-hmm. Okay? the economy slows down, the bad businesses go out of business, the good businesses stay in business. Everything is more efficient that way. And it sounds cruel,
want to do that.
but when you have a politician speaking everything, like, we don't want a recession. Some people might lose a job, and I'll lose my in office. It's not a perfect world, and these things have to happen to have a stable economy. You perpetually prop up, the more you prop up an economy the harder it's going to fall. People don't want to realize it's an imperfect world. Not everything is going to work right. No matter, there's always, some people are allergic to peanuts, some people are going to be allergic to a drug. And you get so much bureaucracy involved, you get so many lawyers involved, and everything's sort of, with medical insurance and things like that. I don't know the exact solution to medical care, but more government is definitely not the answer.
We have a 28-year-old who was elected, or in the primary, the Democrat primary, not elected yet, in New York. She got around 17,000 votes, and she's on every major news outlet. They're saying this is the future of the Democrat Party. This is being celebrated. Why would this be celebrated?
Well, you have basically no one is taught, okay, here's an example, okay? Every kid coming out of high school thinks a corporation is evil, but they have no idea what a corporation is. And like, I've explained this to a million young people that work for me and things like that. A corporation's a piece of paper. A piece of paper cannot be evil. You might have really bad guys running a corporation, but a corporation in itself can't be bad. And you wouldn't have that cell phone without a corporation. You wouldn't have a car without a corporation. You wouldn't have the power on in your house without a corporation. Corporations are one of the greatest inventions of all time. It's a way to combine capital without any risk above and beyond the amount of capital, and to create wealth. There's not a single person that can come up with the money to just start a massive car company. He's going to have to go out to the market and get money. But this isn't taught to anybody. This isn't taught to anyone in kids. All they're taught is that corporations are evil. They go to college, and they're basically told by these liberal professors that have never lived in the real world, everything should be free. And like Margaret Thatcher said, socialism is great until you run out of other people's money. It has never worked. All it does is, the socialists say everyone will be equal, and you'll be equally miserable and equally poor.